Evening, ladies and gentlemen. It's Monday, August 25th, 2014. This is the Veterans Today Radio News Reports. I'm your host, Stu Webb. I have 4 guests lined up. In the first hour will be Gordon Duff, Senior Editor, Veterans Today. The second hour will be Managing Editor, Jim Dean. Gene Chip Tatum and Preston James will be on the second hour with us. And with that said, Gordon Duff, how are you this evening, sir?
Well, in the middle of Ohio, we're having Jim Dean's weather from Atlanta. I'm thinking 92, 93 degrees here with about 90% humidity. They can take that. My motorcycle's in the shop. I don't get to do this all the time here. I want to just take advantage of having an audience here. Don't know how many of you are out there, but sometimes it's quite a few things we've gone through recently. Now, I know we've all become complacent about these things. We think of ourselves as Americans and how special we are, and yet, well, let's say you needed a job, and some of you out there do. Some of you need a second job because your first job isn't paying a damn thing. And if you go into the newspaper and look for a job, it isn't hard to figure out that 90% of the things that look like jobs in the paper are people trying to cheat you out of money. Similarly, if you needed money for a short period of time, a payday loan, for instance, or they have new bring your car title in things. I was just offered a credit card yesterday from Barclays. I've had a Visa card with them for decades and decades. They're offering me, this is wonderful here, it's a new black card. They want, the fee is $495 a year, and the interest rate on it is 25%. I'm still trying to figure that one out, but the perk is that somehow it will get you into the first-class lounges in airports. The last time I was in a first-class lounge in an airport was in Dubai. I was in the Lufthansa first-class lounge, and I believe someone gave me a bologna sandwich, only a little bit of mold on the bread, and I was sitting in the corner in the floor, waiting for a turn at the electric plug so I could plug my computer and get the battery charged up. That was the first class lounge. I want to pay $495 since I fly first class anyway. But anyone, when you go through those magic doors to the first class lounge, unless you're in one of a very few places like Frankfurt maybe, past those doors and past that desk are worse chairs that are sitting out anywhere else, and peanut butter sandwiches, cheap beer, and some of the worst wine in the world. Anybody that really wants to be in a first-class lounge and wants to arrive or get long layovers for this is living in the wrong planet.
With a moldy sandwich. Whoops, sorry about that. With a moldy bread, right?
I feel we're getting noises here already.
That's on my end, Gordon. It's the way I've had to hook up the speakers here.
Well, we're doing what we call, and for those of you born in Krakow or Warsaw, I call it a Polish conference call when we have a telephone and a microphone hooked together with duct tape. And we've been doing this for kind of a long time. At some point we'll get technically past this. Since we turn larger numbers than Limbaugh did, probably the biggest thing to talk about today, we'll break into real story stuff. A lot of stuff is going on in the world, and if you're not following any of it because it just seems too stupid or overwhelming or too dark or too whatever, or you're buying in on any one of a series of endless conspiracy theories, which now seem to come out of the mainstream media along with Alex Jones and the right. And if we wanted to put an actual name on who all of those people are, the term Zionist is what applies. And do with me saying that whatever you will. I don't care, actually, kind of. But here's what we've got we set up working groups at Veterans Day. We've had one working over the last couple of days. We published a detailed study on America's nuclear weapons program, and rather than having people report on this who read about it in journals, we actually went to our nuclear design labs, talked to the people there, and said, hey, why don't you tell us what you've been working on? And surprisingly, they just said, well, okay. So we have, and this is, I call it flexing our nuclear muscle. We have a very strong relationship with the teams at Los Alamos, in particular the Department of Energy team. These guys are still around, who worked on 9/11. And the first report, the first people on the scene at 9/11, the first people who arrived at ground zero were the IAEA, the International Atomic Energy Agency. They were at a meeting in New York with the UN over Iran, of all things. And they were the first people that were called down. And all of these guys at the IAEA also work in America's weapons labs. Scientists, for the most part, are considered neutral. And to some extent, that's largely true. There are some exceptions. There are a few really hokey characters out there, but most of them just generally value telling the truth, because once they start lying to a point here, their reputations as scientists are dead, and once that you don't work anymore. So they tend to stick to the straight and narrow. And the team that investigated 9/11 and put out the 2003 report of 9/11 as a nuclear event has turned out about, a little under 20,000 words with diagrams and formulas. And I will tell you that we altered the formulas because these documents would be classified otherwise. When the formula is not specifically altered to make sure that if anyone attempts to use these formulas, the weapons that they build will blow up in the process. You would have the plan for every new and version design of nuclear weapon, including nuclear weapons that will work on as low as 20% uranium and that use initiators. Some of them are so simple you could build them in your basement, as long as you had 800 pounds of uranium oxide at 40% purity. And the house, last time I checked, I only had 600 pounds. And, any more than that, you start losing hair. But we have all of this here. The physics are daunting. So if you, and that's what I'm advocating for people, and just try to read through it. And I know you'll, I'm an engineer. The math reminded me of going back to school. But it's there, and within this, there will be things you will understand, stuff you won't. If you're a nuclear physicist, you'll know that we put the keys to the kingdom out there, proving that we have access and information that no one else has. And credibility, no network, no government organization, no investigation agency can come close to. That's what I mean by flexing muscle. We laid it out there. And we'd like to see, if anybody here with a background in nuclear physics wants to explore with any of this, we're ready to take them on. And and we've been doing this for the past couple of months.
Well, it sounds like we got our friendly either Chinese intelligence or national security with their Utah alien base hooked up to us here with the connection to the radio station with all the humming noise we have, Gordon.
Well,
seems like they don't want us on. We might have to disconnect in a minute. Let's see here.
Yeah, go ahead and unhook me and ring me back in.
Stay where you're at, Gordon. I'm going to unhook us on the other end. Hold on. Now, since I say we're going to unhook, we get the noise stopped. Isn't that interesting?
Well, thank you. I've got a story to tell about this since we're here. We traced not all of the problems we had, but a significant number of the problems we have to an Army Signals Command at Fort Huachuca in Sierra Vista, Arizona. Now, here's what the Army did last week, and these are smart guys. So at the post here in Sierra Vista, one of the officers there, one of the field grade officer, is getting married. And if it's like any other Army officer, and this says most of them are drunks, it's usually a fourth or fifth marriage, but I'm not anyone to talk about that. So in the process, they invited the senior military officer from the area onto the post for the wedding. And the most senior intelligence officer in Sierra Vista is Colonel James Hankey, former attaché to Israel, and certainly a former G2 of NATO, and oddly enough, an editor for Veterans Today. And while at the wedding reception, Jimmy, Colonel Hankey, took a few moments out to address his fellow Army folks there about why they were tapping our phones and interfering with these broadcasts. We have this information. They admitted to doing so. Several people left the reception because Hankey was going to drop them on their head. We're very aware of what they're doing, and we're very disappointed. We're very disappointed when we have Army command illegally, in violation of Ponte Comitatus, working psychological warfare operations against the United States, and in particular against veterans today. If they think they want to take us on, this backwoods hodunk command, the intelligence and signal school at Fort Huachuca, where the blind, deaf, and dumb are trained to fly drones and bomb weddings at schools. If they want to take us on, please go ahead and do it. We'll see who blinks first. But you don't think we can walk into your office in Fort Huachuca and talk to you? You better start tagging our ID cards, because I carry an active ID card. I have no problem going in and out of there. And I certainly would like to find out who is responsible for getting authority to illegally use Department of Defense funds on behalf of a foreign government. And this is exactly what that is. These are people in the U.S. Signal Command School who are being paid by the government of Israel to sabotage American telephone, radio broadcasts, and to hack computers. And they've been hacking computers as well. We're aware of this. We know who's doing it. And for the audience out here, I can tell you we've confronted the people personally.
Oh, here they come again. They've got to run a cycle here. Hey, Gordon, since they're listening, if you decide to go in the front door, can you get me a pass to come in behind you? I want to kick some ass.
You're not allowed to do that, but I am. Because there is absolutely no protection in committing a crime on an American base. And what you're listening to right now is a crime being committed by members of the United States Army using American tax dollars fraudulently. This is a crime. Listen to it right now. This is what your tax dollars are paying for. When you send that income tax check in, when you watch your paychecks being dribbled down, and don't worry about it. If you're working hard and not making very much money, just know that you're paying a lot more than people have, a lot more than you. They don't pay anything.
Hold on, Gordon. We're going to dump them. There, all of a sudden it stops. As soon as I say I'm going to dump it, what is this?
Yeah. Well, an interesting point I'd like to bring out here, and this is to my friends, the 28 million veterans in the U.S., of which you and I are one, that we have knowingly fought wars for what were American corporations that treat Americans like shit, that love to steal around the world. Well, now these corporations are all offshore. So we're fighting wars. We're subsidizing with all of the taxes the middle class and other classes pay in the U.S. We're subsidizing offshore corporations that pay no American taxes. The biggest of them, of course, is Exxon. Exxon benefits more from American military actions. Exxon makes more profit related to the deaths of American servicemen than anyone else. And they pay not 1 cent of taxes in the United States. If anything, not only do they receive federal benefits for doing nothing, they receive billions in services from the U.S. government that the rest of us pay for. When we protect shipping lanes, it's for Exxon. When we protect oil facilities and access to oil, it's for Exxon. When we send our military anywhere, when every American embassy, of course, has a commerce section, all they do is kiss Exxon's behind. Like, maybe I should use that other word. It's more appropriate. And they don't pay a cent of taxes. Most of these corporations don't work within the U.S. Back to where we were going a little earlier, we have seen a pattern. We have a working group. We have noticed a pattern. In Iraq with ISIL, in Gaza, the Foley execution, Ferguson, other things politically happening within the U.S., within Syria, certainly within the Ukraine. Yeah, and you're not liking this, are you?
They aren't liking it. Hey, you want to stop this game? It's amazing how we get them to, I don't know. Let's just try to cut it off here and start all over.
It's absolutely not an accident.
We're back, Gordon.
Okay, the point being is that something about every one of these things is utterly phony. And I hate to find myself, and I should probably, Alex Jones invites me onto his show, and you know, he's not a discourteous guy, mind you. You know, there are people I don't much care for, and simply because they're worthless slime balls. Alex Jones is not worthless. Heaven forbid. You know, he's a little hokey, but he's not worthless anyway, and he's not discourteous. But his point, and of course he finds imaginary conspiracy theories in anything that discredit the rest of us. But the point I'd like to make here, let's talk about the Foley execution. Now, this is Veterans Today Radio Network, and I expect that a lot of you people out here have carried the gun on behalf of this country, and the past 20 years on or off, a lot of you have had a chance to get shot at on behalf of whoever the hell it is that any of us are working for, and we don't even know. And, you know, I'm a Marine combat veteran. I think an awful lot of you out there are the same. We watched this execution. If you've been in combat situations or faced imminent death, I have done so. There is a battle with paralytic fear. Now, the longer you are exposed to combat, the more that goes away, where you just develop a screw-it attitude. I just don't care anymore. All this is explained in the movie 12 O'Clock High with Gregory Peck in a most elegant way. Any of you that are familiar with the film will know what I'm talking about. If you haven't, I'm pretty sure it's available on Amazon or Hulu or any of the other services, what they are to watch. Do so. But it explains this better than anything else. Wonderful film. Well, with Mr. Foley being executed, he's standing up there and just, he's not drugged. He's talking about how we're all evil capitalist swine and how we all, he's giving out a pretty good spiel here. My personal experience on this, and I have personal experience in this area, and lots of training in this area, it is extremely unlikely that anything in this execution is real. And Alex Jones has said the same thing. I would tend to go the other way, just to go the other way, but I'm not going to do it because he may well be right, because none of this makes any sense. Now, what we have discovered, and this is something about the ISIS here. The ISIS is closely aligned with organizations within what is called the U.S. Joint Special Operations Command, which was, and frankly may still be, headed by former Vice President Cheney. I just have a tendency to want to insert him in a plot, whether he's got it or not. Such a charming guy. And, where do you find a Darth Vader character like this in the real world? It's a gift from heaven. How can you just keep hating Bush just because he's a little, a twit? A malevolent little cowardly twit, though he is. But he's hard to hate because he's utterly brain dead. The cocaine and alcohol just ate away his frontal lobes a long time ago. His entire presidency is a testimony to the fact that he was brain dead when he hit office. This is a guy who spent 270 days a year on vacation. Frankly, he was doing what I'd like to do. But that's neither to there. There's a story that starts back in the 1980s. There was a young major named Michael Aquino, smart guy, serving at the Presidio. And they had a problem at the Presidio with their daycare area. And the problem, they can tell you it was children being abused or whatever. I'm going to tell you what the problem was. The problem was ritual child sacrifices. Not long after this, Mike Aquino announced that he was founding an organization called the Temple of Set. The Temple of Set involves, it's a version of proto-Freemasonry that involves the worship rather than Baal. And Freemasonry is an apocalypse death cult. If you don't know this, you're not a 33rd degree Mason, but it's an apocalypse death cult. The Temple of Set is pre-Christian, early religion, Phoenician-based to a large extent, Egyptian and Phoenician-based. And it is a belief system that if you were to call it satanic, you wouldn't be entirely wrong, okay? It is, the rituals involve black masses. Aquino runs the Temple of Set. It is part of an organization that earlier in the last century was founded in Britain by MI6, their intelligence services, and a guy named Aleister Crowley. Michael Aquino worked with another Army officer called Paul Vallely. Paul Vallely is a major general retired in the U.S. Army. The two of them helped found the current version of the National Security Agency. Some of the people interfering with this call, Mr. Vallely and Mr. Aquino, also established America's psychological warfare command system, which has involved, let's say, efforts using every kind of magic, and that's with the K, by the way, guys, every kind of occult, all of the things you watch those TV shows about Hitler and the occult. Well, this is where these guys come from. They are occult extremists. The Temple of Set. ISIS is a reincarnation of the Temple of Set. If you were to see, say, if you were to go on YouTube and pull up videos of General Paul Vallely, Vallely, you will find him with these Temple of Set, old religion, pre-Christian, call them satanic if you will, ISIS. You will find him with them, and you will find videos of him actively, and these are an Al-Qaeda organization seen as and named by Secretary of Defense Hagel and Chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, General Martin Dempsey, have named them an imminent threat to the United States. You will see General Vallely advising them in military operations. Now, the latest video
doesn't Vallely come on Fox News continuously? Gordon?
I can barely hear you.
I said, doesn't General Vallely come on Fox News all the time?
Yeah, he's a military correspondent for Fox News. He's a smart guy. He's a friend of John Stokes, by the way. Okay. I know. It's one of these things that, it's a small world. My guys have known him for some time. Our guys don't hate him by any means. But he has gotten himself involved. He is the military founder of ISIS. He is an extremely capable psychological warfare officer. And he is more than capable of coaching ISIS were they to stage an execution. He would be able to arrange for them to do anything of that kind. He has available anything you can imagine as far as CGI goes, anything. ISIS has availability of technologies, everything the U.S. or in particular Israel has. Now, Vallely is a member of an apocalypse death cult, as is Michael Aquino. That's the term they use for this. I'm not a Christian. These guys have their own set of beliefs. Vallely, I believe, tries to hang out with a Christian right. He's not a Christian. Aquino, by the way, is not an idiot. These are talented guys. Now, the question we have, why are they doing this? And here's what we're seeing, and this is this is where we can always, the Israelis did it. Since the bombing in Gaza that's going on, their involvement, the oligarchs involved with the military junta in Kiev, that every other day claims that the Russians, and this is Jim Dean and I were just talking. I'm gonna digress for a minute here. Huffington Post just ran an article saying that a Russian armored column is heading through Ukraine right now. Now, I will tell you, this is the 7th time the Huffington Post has reported this. Now, if any of you remember watching the old All-Star games, but back years and years ago, they used to have what were called streakers. Somebody get in the stand, they'd take off all their clothes, they'd climb down onto the field, they'd run out into the outfield, run in circles for a while until somebody went out and tackled them to the ground. But I think this is what the Russians must be doing in the Ukraine. They line up armored columns at 3 in the morning, and it's like it's like a drunken frat party thing. Hey, let's go straight through the Ukraine for a couple hours, drive up and down, then head back into Russia before anybody with a mobile phone that can take pictures can take a picture of it, or before any of the satellites can get pictures of it either. So for 7 separate invasions, supposedly the Russians have made, no one has ever seen one of their vehicles cross the border. No one has ever taken a photograph with their iPhone of any of it. Nothing's been posted to YouTube. There are no satellite photos. And if we remember, after MH17, when the U.S. did post satellite photos, we found that they had been altered. That what were they had been photoshopped, and it's not the first time we've done this. What we are finding is this. The next point we have is Ferguson. And you know, I like seeing Americans come together and blame the police for things. Heaven forbid we should all just blame the police for stuff. You know, the Israelis train them. They've got tanks and guns. They love shooting veterans. I was a cop for 2.5 years. It wasn't as bad as working for, let's say, we'll call the organization the ABC Detective Agency. That was really bad. But being a cop, a terrible job. And I don't wish it on anybody. However, I kind of will tell you that an awful lot of police aren't so bad as you might think they are, you know. But let's go somewhere else. This issue over Ferguson. First of all, we've got a dead kid here. Well, this dead kid. Let's be quite honest about this. You know, I'm a gun guy. Stu's a gun guy. I'm not a liberal anti-war guy. I'm very conservative and very pro-war. I just think we're always killing the wrong people. I got a list of people I think need killing, and it's just very different than the one we usually use. And as Stu's presidential candidate here, I'm just telling you, if we used my list of people to kill, that we wouldn't even have to pay the army anymore. You'd all just join. No, it'd be a way of going on vacation. It would be nice if, for once, we started killing people who had it coming. But I digress. Like many Americans, I'm sitting in my office in my house here now. Probably a little more house than most Americans have, but as a 1%er, I can have a great big house, which you know, I have to run up and down stairs from. And so sitting under my desk here, we're drawing this out, is a Winchester Model 1300 stainless steel Marine Magnum shotgun. You don't have to ever lubricate it. You don't have to do anything. It's stupidly loaded with 12-gauge double-aught Magnum shells, by the way, which if you fire it, it will fly out of my hand and blow an entire door off. But why I have that weapon is specifically the young gentleman who was killed in Ferguson. The rest of us, black, white, I don't care what group you are, those of you who are armed specifically. So when and if that individual there, the one that we're all crying over, breaks down your front door, you can blow him in half. That's why we buy guns. Let's just admit this right now. And, you know, I work in Africa. I did not have a black-white group in Detroit. I went through all of this. I went through the Civil Rights era. My father was a member of the Urban League, communist, by the way. But I was raised in let's say, a less than average racist household. Not racist, that no such thing exists, but less than most. You know, we had more culturally, let's say, adjustable than most families. But we have these realities here. And I live in a slightly mixed neighborhood. You can live where I live as long as you're a millionaire, whatever color you are is fine. You know, nobody cares. But if an ex-convict, violent ex-convict, after dark, comes through my door or approaches me somehow, I will generally, and I've never done this, and I spent 2.5 years as a cop. I never took a gun out of a holster, never pointed a gun at anyone, and never seriously injured anyone, although I did a little wrestling with people a few times, you know, and some stitches and stuff like that. But nothing nothing too dramatic. You know, that kind of normal stuff can happen in a day working in a machine shop, you know. But this is the wrong person. This is not over. Even Trayvon is, you know, and there's quite an injustice there. This is the wrong person, and I'm very sorry for his mother. And but I don't think we have the facts straight here to go into this. I don't think we did. It's become a left-right thing, and it shouldn't have been. I'm saying this was staged. Now, we have a video here of CNN that's been bouncing around where we watch CNN and the police staging a confrontation between a cop and reporter. It's very reminiscent of the Sandy Hook Robbie Parker giggling, my daughter's dead, hooray, 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 video that I think everybody in the world has seen. That video alone, without the thousands of other stories, tell you that Sandy Hook never happened. And that's just why there's no question at all, that video alone. I didn't have to see FBI agents followed around by a guy on the telephone, and that telephone recording had the FBI agents speaking Hebrew to each other. Don't see much of that. FBI agents would be speaking Mormon to each other, but even Mormons speak English or some variety of it. But when we have all of these things, the beheading, theatrical, the insane theatricality inside Gaza, and there certainly is this. There is every effort here, and heaven forbid I've come out against what Israel is doing, and I'm not a professional supporter of Hamas. It's not my position, but there's something very wrong there. The position the Egyptians are playing, there's something extremely wrong in the fact that Erdogan of Turkey is pretending that he supports the Palestinians and is doing nothing. That ISIS claims they're supporting the Palestinians who are planning to attack Israel. They are doing nothing, and they have troops very close to Israel and could do a lot of damage. And it's my belief that ISIS is under the control of the Israeli government, is under the control and guidance of members of the Joint Special Operations Command, and that they are part of an apocalypse death cult which they share with key members of the American military, key members of the Tea Party, key members of, and Stu, key members of what group that you know of?
AIPAC and the U.S. Congress.
And go ahead and name the name that I won't let you use.
Which name do you want? John McCain or Larry Mizell?
Go ahead and say the other one.
Larry Mizell, bank bailout scamster, AIPAC director. Yeah. John McCain's boss.
These people are running and it's all going on at the same time, carefully coordinated. The whole thing is a psyop. And yes, there are 500 dead kids in Gaza. It's a psyop with 500 dead kids. Who would kill 500 children with a psyop? Well, I think Stu tells you all the time who would do it. Who would help them? John Sidney McCain or Cindy McCain. I think he's really the one named Cindy, not his wife. Certainly, who has the capability of planning this? Now, why is it being planned? Is there somehow some great layered onion, some grand chessboard here, where someone has put all of this together and it's going to leave us a better world somehow after all of the Christians in the Middle East have been slaughtered, after the Kurdish government's overthrown, after Iraq is ripped apart, certainly after we bring a new Bush regime into Washington to bankrupt the U.S. or to push us into a new series of wars, which will be, I think, predicated on a massive terror act inside the U.S., very possibly now, and this is what I warn of, destroying our power grid using EMP nuclear weapons designed by a group at Sandia Labs, and we've written on that.
By the way, Colorado last night, Gordon, had a massive blackout, power outage all over the Denver area. Maybe it's a test run.
And very, very likely it is. But what's going on here? Absolutely none of the things you're seeing going on, none of these things are real. The dead people are real. Now, there's no question about that. Some of them are, not the ones at Sandy Hook. We could go back and talk about the Boston Marathon, how embarrassing that was. You can go on to Veterans Day and you can look at an article by Dr. James Fetzer on the 7/7 bombings in London. Now, few of you remember this. Americans really never heard much about this. But this was the most bogus, significant terror attack of all time. There is a video that was made by John Anthony Hill called Ripple Effect. It is on the article. This is under Warzone at veteranstoday.com. I recommend you go there. Watch the entire video. I know you hate doing this stuff. Watch as much of it as you can anyway. John Anthony Hill was in Ireland. This is more than a few years ago now. Made this video, and when trials were going on inside Britain, trying to blame a couple of young Muslims for blowing up a bus and several subway cars. They're called the Underground in the UK, subway here. A subway in the UK is a pathway under a road, by the way. That's neither here nor there, but just so you know. But he sent that video in, mailed it into the court. Well, they extradited him because sending the video he made that exposes 7/7 as a false flag terror attack was considered a conspiracy against the British government. Well, he was put on trial in Britain, extradited from Ireland, and the government there were cowards. The Irish government can't be trusted. They're a petty criminal regime. Nothing to the degree that Australia is, mind you, and Tony Abbott. Nothing like that. There is nothing on this planet as stupid as Tony Abbott. But and I know we have a lot of Australian listeners out there. We get big numbers in Australia, and I expect a little cheer to be going out in the pub right now on that one. But yeah, we've got Tony Abbott's number. We're watching him, a crazed Jesuit who is absolutely under the thumb of what Preston James calls the secret shadow government. He is a minor toady, and you have my deepest sympathy, and I hope you can do something as quickly as possible to kick that man to the curb. As Mr. Cameron in Britain deserves much of the same. I have to be careful there. Well, not that careful, because I work in London. For all that's worth. I mean, the office is right off the Strand, probably about 50 yards from Old Bailey, actually, in the city of London, and that's where my day job is. But Ripple Effect exposes the 7/7 terror attacks. Now, this is really cool. They set up a what we would call a terror drill, and then they hired young Muslims to wear pretend bombs and sent them around so that they could be tracked down by an Israeli company that hired them, that was going to see if they could find terrorists with dirty bombs within London. And lo and behold, what did they do? They hired young Muslims and gave them real bombs, and then blew them up. And am I making this up? Not only can we prove it, we proved it. When John Anthony Hill was put on trial, they showed his video. He defended his video in front of an audience, and the not guilty finding of the British jury was based essentially on this. I mean, it's exactly what it was based on. The jury found that John Anthony Hill's video accusing the government of Britain with staging a terrorist attack on itself, killing he proved his case. Now, no one was ever arrested, but he was released. And this is someone, they went a long way to destroying this person's life. A very, very long way to doing that. Stu, where do we sit time-wise here now? Stu, are you there?
Yes, I am. I'm sorry, Gordon. What did you say?
Where do we sit time-wise?
Oh, we have as much time as you want. You've got the show. At the top of the hour, Jim Dean's going to come on, but I know he'll set for 10 minutes or so.
No. One of the things I try not to do any more than possible is to go on forever. What I prefer in some of these shows, and these will go to YouTube, and of course we've been wiped off YouTube before. There's a war against us here. And to an extent, we've replaced the mainstream media between us, and we're not a perfect crowd of people by any means, but we're basically better than everyone else. I look at the resources and money that InfoWars has, and I also wonder where they get it, because I know that nobody's got anything resembling advertisers that can pay any of the expenses for their really excellent production values. I think they do a beautiful job, and I've got a regular job. None of us do this for a living. I mean, we do this as I'd like to say a labor of love, and there are days when I get angry or get frustrated, or it's time to go after somebody, and I'll want to do that. But
Gordon, you still there?
To a lot of you out there, and this is I work outside the United States extensively, have for a long time. I grew up in Detroit, 1950s and 60s mostly, born in the 40s, and never really thought I'd travel or do any of the things I have. And what you learn more or less is that the border here, that our idea of the U.S. and our idea of patriotism, that when I look at what's going on in Iraq, well, I've worked in Kurdistan. We have a lot of Americans who work in Kurdistan, north of Erbil. There's an American community there, and I mean ski lodges, Fridays, McDonald's, Starbucks, great hotels, nice homes, schools, and golf courses up there. You go up there, and then almost to the Turkish border, and then it's trying to think of the town here, H or whatever, that's north of Mosul. But that area is very, very American. Kurdistan is an American state. The rest of Iraq is not American. Now, people there are fine. If they don't love Americans, I don't think we necessarily have it coming, okay? Let's just say that. But the Kurds, Americans were very imperfect people, but the Kurds really like us a lot. So if even your dog doesn't like you, you can go to Kurdistan, and the people of Kurdistan will like you. It's that kind of place. It's an American-friendly area. So, should we fight to defend Kurdistan alone? The Iraqis don't like me saying this, but I say yes, that the people of the United States have a debt to Kurdistan. They stood by us when no one else would. The Kurds have always been loyal to the United States. Erbil is a very nice city. You can actually, this is the city that was being shelled 6 days ago. You can pick up a plane from Vienna or from Dubai or from Amman, Jordan. Good hotels. You can just rent a car, go anywhere you want. A significant number of people speak English. Roads are nice. It's a safe area. It was a safe area in 2005 when you couldn't walk across the street in dozens of cities of Iraq without having your head blown off.
Here comes our...
Walk around Erbil. all night long.
Here comes our NSA buddies again. They got to interfere here, they think. Gordon? But I'm not going to allow them to interfere. And we're right back on the air. That's simple, Gordon.
Yeah, I don't know what it is here, but and we're not gonna let up on our friends at Huachuca. Yeah, go ahead. Every cent if you don't think I can go to a member of Congress on House appropriations and have you guys call to account for what you're spending. And if you don't think we have informants on the base who tell us what you're doing, if you don't think we know everything you're doing there, if you don't think we have lots of friends in the Sierra Vista community, you're insane. And if you think that you can, get involved, and it's a game you're going to lose. If you'd like to see your retirement gone, if you'd like to be retired down 2 ranks, you don't think I can do that to you? Why don't you call somebody and ask and have them tell you, hey, Gordon says he's going to do this. Find out if I can really do this. The point being is that why I can do this is because I would only do this for a very good reason and for a reason that other people support. It isn't that I have necessarily the power. It's that I'm on the right side of an issue, that I share with people who have the ability to make your life a lot.
Hold right there, Gordon. We've got a break. I want to run you for 5 more minutes here and talk about a couple items. Right back. This is Veterans Day Radio News Reports. I'm your host, Stu Webb, and it's Monday, August the 25th, 2014, and we're in the second hour here. And my special guest has been Gordon Duff. He's still on with us, and I want him to finish up in the next 5 or 10 minutes what he had to say. We have Jim Dean on the line. We also have Preston James is going to be coming up after Jim Dean's report, along with Gene Chip Tatum. So with that said, Gordon, would you please finish up with what we were talking about before?
Okay, and I'm gonna, if I really possibly can, I'll see if I can get back off speakerphone here. Return to call in progress. I'll tell you, never give anybody over 60 a smartphone, especially if it's a Samsung. The software in these things insanely incompetent. Without being too grim here, I'll explain the situation, and this is for those of you out here who can deal with it or whatever. I will lay something out as concisely as possible. And don't normally this will be the downer section here. Real, serious, and unpleasant. So if you've already had 5 minutes to go to the bathroom, maybe consider making yourself some coffee now. There is a problem with the military, and I know as much about this as anyone. I do a lot of communication with veterans and with military. And if anything, and I've been surprised at this, but within the military and intelligence community, people at BP are right now, we are the senior folks out there. And it's maybe just because we haven't died yet, but we're the senior guys. We're good at what we do. The term my special forces friend uses is truth and beauty. And it may sound corny, but that you either play it for real, like with honor, or not at all. And I love all of the accusations that are, sometimes made against us. Certainly, I get attacked a lot because heaven forbid, I'm sort of like the Boy Scout of all time. other than the fact that police can start that nature sometimes, and you figure out who we are, stay out of the way. It's very, very real. It's that attitude, lots of power, lots of financing, lots of backing, because there are a hell of a lot of decent people out there in the world who are willing to die beside us. A lot. For what we believe in, whatever that is, and none of that's race hatred. There's very real right and wrong, and I'm breaking into what the military is about, and I see Jim Dean's coming up. I'll do this as quickly as possible. Two issues. Within the military, we have a group of younger officers, and I will say lieutenant colonel and below, lieutenant colonel to captain, that range, who are extremely disaffected with the kind of military that has been created. They're not entirely pleased with Ray Odierno, who is the head of the Army, although this guy is close to Obama. We won't get into the personality thing there. But during the Bush administration, Bush cleaned an awful lot of people out of the military. I'll take a moment to mention one of them. General Shinseki, the guy who was forced to resign from the Department of Veterans Affairs. Shinseki didn't do a great job at Veterans Affairs. Japanese background, he went in and stepped into a Bush-era corruption and just didn't have the personal gonads to believe that he had to go in and start taking heads. And he really had to do that. But he reformed a lot. He did more than anyone recently has done, because he had taken over an extremely corrupt organization and he fixed much of it. He was not forced out over this veteran rescheduling thing in Phoenix. That is a phony, planted story. That never happened. The CNN reporters that did it, the whole thing was done to embarrass him personally, because Shinseki had decided to remove the power and authority of the exceedingly corrupt American Legion, which bleeds millions of dollars out of the Veterans Administration and billions more out of veterans organizations in counties, states, and cities around the United States, running their bars, running their games, and doing nothing. Everything corrupt in the Veterans Administration, Department of Veterans Affairs, has happened under the direct supervision and advisement of the American Legion. They have been there watching, approving, and taking part of all of the corruption. They are absolutely every bit of a part of it. And Shinseki was gotten rid of. Yeah, go ahead and cut me off. Shinseki was gotten rid of because he decided to deal with them and take them out. They took them out instead. And why CNN would help them? Larger plot. Point number two, the young officers. Let's come to bring this one back. We have two groups. We have young officers that we are negotiating with. And if and when there are terrorist attacks against the United States in the next couple of months, between now and the election, and we have been told that the United States may be attacked with more than one nuclear weapon within that time, we are asking them, which would destroy the command structure of the United States and the cohesive command structure of the federal government. We are asking these military commands to join with us and restore a government. And that's only if we have lost the government. We will restore the government with these individuals who trust us for who we are. And that will be restore constitutional authority to the government, and it will not have a Supreme Court or a Federal Reserve when we're done. Just so you know this. Because those things aren't constitutional. They're going to be missing. Okay? And that's only if we have lost continuity of command here. And there's an effort to do this. And that effort to do this, we have come upon a plot against the United States. And this has been found by groups within the NSA, the Army and the Central Intelligence Agency have found that a group of disaffected Americans who are financially dependent on Sheldon Adelson, the Koch brothers, Fox News, the, let's say, right-wing elements, extremist right-wing elements, are planning a series of terror attacks in the United States, which could include attacking power facilities in the U.S. using EMP weapons and massive suicide bombings that would include shopping malls and specifically mentioned with a Saturday morning Walmart store. Specifically. And I will assure you that law enforcement authorities are totally and absolutely aware of this threat. I will also assure you they are not beginning to deal with it. If any of these things manifest themselves, come to us. You know who we are. You know how to get a hold of Stu, me, Mike Harris, Jim Hankey, any of us. We will work within members of Congress and the rest of the U.S. to return this country where it needs to be if. And this is very much if. I'm not somebody to take down the United States government. Others are trying to do that. I want it to be better than it is. And if someone destroys it, I'll make sure that it is.
Gordon,
we're not revolutionaries and we're not criminals. But we'll make sure that those people involved in doing this, and we have your names. We know who you are. What is the number we have of people involved? How many is it, Stu?
Well, there's 1,400 hardcore military types that have been relieved of duty. 2,800 of them total is what my understanding is. And there's approximately 400 at the very top working for between APEC and Daddy Bush's crime syndicate that are plotting and planning this. And I'll tell you, you'll have 24 hours to get you and your money outside of our reach. And that's going to have to be Antarctica, Greenland, or Paraguay. Because anywhere else, we will hunt you down. We're not going to allow Americans to be slaughtered in this country again. We're not going to take it. We're not going to allow any false flag terrorism. We're not going to allow a cover-up. We're not going to hold people within the news media innocent anymore. If you're involved in a cover-up, you're complicit. And the stakes are raised here. The stakes involve taking the United States government down. And at this, I would relinquish my time to Jim W.D. Well, Jim, good evening, sir.
Well, how are you?
I thank you very much, Gordon Duff, for the special report. And if you want to hang for a minute, you can. Go ahead, Jim.
Okay. Well, it's been an interesting week. Last week, looking back, and it looks like we're going to have a new one. This week, I'm going to start off, we talked about sanctions last week because the blowback on the sanctions was really starting to crank in. But we also had additional things happening. Today, we had the French government fell. And although they did not mention the Russian sanctions specifically, they had a different target in mind. And usually they don't want to put, politicians are sometimes averse to putting more than one thing in front of the public at one time. But the French government fell. They're going to have to build a new government. And they specifically went after Germany, saying that their hardship and fiscal autocracy was wrecking the economies because there was, with all the cutbacks in spending, there's no purchasing power. And you have people that have been laid off who are just on a survival mode. But worse, people who have money are just not spending it. And there's a couple reasons for that. They don't want to put anything out before maybe the next crash could come by. So you have the folks that are in a defensive mode. Of course, that doesn't include all the people in the stock markets, which have been doing very well. But then they also, the real big guys, and they've been holding back a lot of their investment because if there is a big crash, they want to be able to go in and not buy things up at a 25% discount, but at a 80, 90% discount. And so they're holding their money back because they just don't really have any faith. So the French socialist government basically was blaming Germany for basically stalling all of the European economies by not letting them do more deficit funding. Because they just said today, until, where is any improvement in the economy going to come if the consumers do not have more buying power? And again, that was a little stupid in a way because they haven't been able, of course, and also raising taxes. But raising taxes in Europe is never a solution. It's getting people that are dodging taxes because Europe is in a lot of the hurt they're in because there's so much tax fraud going on, and there's huge amounts of money sitting offshore in untaxed paid earnings. And I was surprised about a year ago, they actually someone floated in the EU a proposition that really going after confiscating all of the bank accounts that could not prove that their money came from lawful means would completely bail out a lot of the debt. That's how much is really sitting out there. And they would put, the plan basically was to put a freeze on all the offshore accounts until the real owners of who the accounts were come forward and basically clear, that where the money came from to show that it wasn't drug money, this or that or whatever. And then all the money that the public's been robbed on or scammed out of, they could basically get back and use that to recapitalize the economies. So no one had ever said anything like that before. But then again, it disappeared. Usually the person who makes such a proposal gets taken aside and gets a good talking to. So we have our first government going down. And of course, the French are going to be getting hurt with the agricultural sanctions because it's harvest time. And that's when people are trying to bring the crops in. All the fruits and vegetable people, they're just having to pour stuff out on the ground. They don't even have refrigeration. I was shocked when Gordon told me they don't even have refrigerated trucking because stuff that's not being exported out of the country is basically sold domestically as it's picked, other than what's done canned. But he said out of season in Europe, he said you cannot buy fresh stuff because they don't pay to have it shipped in. So there's no infrastructure for trucking. In the cities, they don't have large refrigerated storage because they just don't have year-round fruit and vegetables that they're bringing in off-season. So that's kind of what's going on in Germany. One of their finance people put out a report that they're going to lose 20 to 25% of their Russian exports by the end of the year, which is about 50,000 jobs. And mind you, this is just the food sector. And if whoever's driving this Ukraine thing of trying to was been baiting Russia to try to go into Ukraine so they could then hit them with a next big round of sanctions, which they have ready, it would be even worse. And Germany said they're looking at losing about 50,000 jobs now. But he said something that I had hoped would come, but it's coming much sooner than I thought. And this is what he said. he really put the word on them. He said, we have to make sure that we put the brakes on anything that can contribute to spiraling sanctions. This is the first time we've heard a major country politician use that term, where they get into a tit for tat. You get the stupid politicians that somebody, for some reason, is paying them to create a panic and create a lot of crisis, because they know now the Russians are loaded for bear. And Putin has already put on the table, they've announced that if there are more sanctions put on Russia, what their counter is going to be. And that is they're going to put a ban on all vehicles coming into the country. And not just cars, but that'll be trucks and buses. And that includes a lot of trucks. They import a lot of luxury cars, particularly Mercedes-Benz. They're very popular in Russia, and that was aimed at Germany. So what they were doing there is letting you know they had a bookend type policy. We're going to start out with the agricultural sector, because those are people who have unions. They're pre-organized. And if they get angry, they have the ability, they're already structured, they're not having to start from scratch, and they can raise holy hell politically. And they're going to be mad, and they're going to be mad for a long time, because a lot of them lost this year's harvest. It's not something that's going to be over with the news cycle in a week or 2 weeks or a month. They're going to be mad that they got sacrificed in this thing. And then the other part of the bookend would be to go into the cities. And the thing about hitting the car industry is you have a lot of feeder businesses that feed them all of their parts chains. So it's not just the people that manufacture and actually put the cars together. You have a ripple effect that goes through the whole industrial economy. So they'll have a double blow in there. And what that will do is they will look for replacement cars amongst the bricks. They're already stimulating replacement planning for fruits and vegetables in terms of expanding their own growth of these things. For instance, Crimea, they've decided to make a very, very big effort to make that a huge wine growing region so that they can replace some of the foreign imports. And they want to do the same thing with some of their own domestic car lines, and also developing more business with the BRICS countries. So the BRICS countries, what we're seeing here is because of this stupid sanctions idiocy, is the slow process of them building more trade with themselves, trading in their own currencies, building new trading systems, currency systems. That is now being ramped up to a 24-hour-a-day, 7-day-a-week operation. How can we do this as quickly as we possibly can to insulate ourselves from Western sanctions? So what's going to happen now, this is what these dummies have done, is that even if this present crisis gets resolved, the trade is never going to go back to what it was, because they can't trust it unless they come up with something out of the UN where everybody agrees that they are not going to use trade sanctions in political wars like this. Because what that's going to do, everybody's just going to assume that you're going to do it just like the Israelis want to attack Gaza every couple of years. They'll just figure this will be something that will be done on a cyclical basis. And they're just basically saying, we're not going to sit here. We're not the Palestinians in Gaza who have to just sit there and take it. So that's it kind of on the financial end. A little interesting footnote from Iran. They threw a wild card out there. They just on the eve of getting back into the nuclear talks, they've come out and accused the U.S., some Western countries, and they said Eastern countries that they had to import some of their nuclear industry equipment from, is to trying to sabotage their nuclear industry by basically doing psyops, tampering with the equipment to basically cause damage and destruction in their nuclear facilities, which is quite dangerous, by the way, can kill people. And of course, they know who it is because everything that's been coming in, they've had to be very careful, whether it's electronic or whatever, to check it for bugs and software. So what they're advocating is that there's some kind of international treaty be put together with penalties that anyone that delivers defective nuclear technology equipment for some kind of sabotage or spy program or whatever, that there be very, very big penalties for that, because that could cause a nuclear accident or something that can affect the whole world. And they said no country, no matter how pissed they are about this, that, or whatever, should have the right to endanger everybody else by trying to sabotage something in the nuclear industry. And I thought that was a very interesting card to play, if nothing else, to put out on the table how reckless some of this stuff that they did with Iran, when we know now that Iran did not have a nuclear weapons program. And yet they murdered their scientists. They were doing this, and the people involved in it was just a game. It was just like Iran. It was open season on Iran. We can do anything we want to them because they've been deemed a threat. So we've got to kind of dial this thing back and take a look at how do these things not only get started and why, who's working an angle on trying to get these big threat things cranked up. And the threat that actually creates to all of the rest of us, if they're bogus threats, and we have to come up with some way that when it's over and we find out that we've been lied to, we have to have new legislation or something to be able to go back and financially confiscate everything that anybody owns that had anything to do with something so horrible like that. Because that's a concept I thought financial terrorism, excuse me, would come in, because it's being practiced on a huge scale. But obviously legislatures and the people who fund them, that's not something that is a very high priority for them. So that's the balance of my time, but those are a few highlights I wanted to get out to the listeners tonight.
Well, if there's anything else you could touch on it, Gene Tatum, we're unable to get him. I don't know whether he'll show up or not in this half an hour, but we do have Dr. Preston James on who's going to be giving a report. So if there's anything else, Jim Dean.
Nope, that'll hold me for tonight. We'll let, I'm sure Dr. Preston has got plenty to talk about. He can fill a half hour with no problem.
Well, I thank you, Jim Dean, for being on with us, and it's always my pleasure and honor to have you on, sir.
Thank you, gang.
Thank you. And Doc, Preston James, you on with me?
Yes, I'm here, Stu. How are you tonight?
I'm good. And you've got a nice article up this week. And the truth is like a lion. You don't have to defend it. Let it loose.
Right.
Itself, right?
Yeah, they're messing with this line pretty good tonight. So, can you hear me all right?
Yes, I can hear you just fine, Doc.
Okay. Yeah, what Gordon Duff had to say was quite amazing. He's connected dots that none of us ever could, and he's really uncovered the core problem that we have a satanic group that has really seized power of the United States, using intelligence connections, and the sad part is these people are into the same thing that the SS was into, which was the Black Reich of the Sun, and it's an old type of worship. Gordon Duff had it correctly, and these people want to create a doomsday scenario. They want to create World War III, a nuclear World War III, massive chaos and destruction, and through that they'll be hiding in their little underground bunkers, and they plan to come out and restructure the world their way, create a new Luciferian government. And they impersonate, a lot of times they impersonate Christians or mix with Christians, and they con Christians. And so what we have is we have consent being given to them by a naive Christian community that thinks, oh well, Israel, the country Israel, these are the relatives of Jesus. If we're mean to them, then it's like rejecting Jesus, our Savior. And they're completely conned. They don't understand that these people have no Hebrew blood in them at all. 97.5% have none, according to a peer-reviewed Harvard study done actually by a MD geneticist who is Jewish, who has basically no bias. He just called it the way it was, and the numbers don't lie. And of course, we have the Palestinians. A very high percentage of them actually carry Hebrew blood. And we also know on top of that that the 10 northern tribes during the diaspora were scattered all over the world to Caucasus Mountains and then all over to Europe and America. So many of us, Scandinavians, Europeans, British, Germans, many of us have ancient Hebrew blood in us. So this whole racial construct of Judaism claiming that they're a racial group, it's baloney. These are Ashkenazis and Khazarians that have absolutely no ancient Hebrew blood, and they're fakes. And of course, it was the British that set this whole thing up, set up internment camps during World War II and through Judaics in there, along with plenty of Christians and Catholics and other enemies of the state, many of them by mistake. And the official Red Cross figures, if I remember, were 200,000 Judaics died in the camp, but also plenty of others that were not. So this figure 6 million was thrown around since the early 1900s. It's complete bull. The Israelis have been for years suing the Germans and the Swiss and trying to get their so-called gold and confiscated artwork back. But it's been shown that, and I would give credit for this to BT financial editor Mike Harris, who also has a talk show. He's an incredibly intelligent guy that knows history like nobody else I've met. And he has shown conclusively that when the neo-Bolsheviks took over, these were these Khazarian families. Not only were they bloodthirsty, they mass murdered hundreds of the upper class doctors and lawyers and whatever, but they killed the Tsar and it's like assassinated them, bayoneted the kids, and it was just brutal to them. Plus stole all the crown jewels of the Tsar, all the gold and silver, and that same stuff went to these families, which was much of it was later confiscated by the Nazis. So in a sense, if you take this back all the way, it seems to me that the Russians really have a legal claim to get that back. And that, since the Israelis, the Judaics living in Israel have all these shrines and all these legal actions going way, way back to the World War II era, it seems to me that the Palestinians have a just legal cause to recover everything that's been stolen from them, from the Lykudas, and also the Russians have a legal claim to recover that too from these same neo-Bolshevik families. It's the same families, the same people. Something is seriously wrong with them. As you know, Stu, some researchers have said they were Canaanites. Others have said they're Kenites, K-E-N-I-T-E. You back?
We are. I
Okay.
apologize. Something happened here.
No, yeah, they don't want anybody to hear this part. But these whatever it is, some of the best researchers say that there's a bloodline of Cain there, and these people go back to that, and they're not like normal human beings. There's something wrong with them. They have no soul. They don't seem to have the ability to manifest any sort of human consciousness or conscience toward other humans. They're very self-centered, very selfish. They're always right. Everybody else is wrong. And some researchers have called them a satanic death cult or a Luciferian death cult at the center. So the bottom line is, because of their alignment, because the world Zionists have become aligned with the British bankers, actually, and seized the British banking system. After Napoleon lost, of course, many know the story how the Rothschild family had intelligence that Napoleon lost, but also claimed, acted as though it was going to win and staged various things to fool people in the British markets. And so they were able to acquire control over the banking system at that time, through these covert operations. Ever since, they have aligned themselves with these Bolshevik families. The city of London was joined at the hip now with the Rothschild Judaics, which are really Babylonian Talmudists, Luciferians, or you might want to call them Satan worshippers. They've really taken over the world financial system. Their game is to manufacture privately fiat currency, which is phony money, and then get laws passed that mandate it's accepted, by the citizens of every country. And once they had the access to the money, they could create as much as they want. They got good control over every major nation of the world. And until we crush that money power, until we get real money back, not phony money, and it's absurd to think that we should have to pay to use our own money, pay interest and principal to use what is ours. It's not theirs. They claim it's theirs. This is the biggest scam in history. This is the source of everything that's going on. And everything that has come from this now is easy to identify. We can look now at how we have all these quasi-governmental committees like Defense Policy Board and all these think tanks, Rand Corporation, all these various think tanks that are really financed by huge world Zionist money through corporations and big donations. And basically they have bought and owned almost every member of Congress, most people in the government, at least 5 Supreme Court judges. Those they can't buy, they blackmail. There's various ways to control. The ones they just plain can't deal with, they murder. That's been their history. So we have these quasi-government agencies coming up with various policies that determine how our government acts. And they determine government policy and get laws passed because they have so much control. But it all goes back to the money power. And until we smash the money power and have honest and constitutional money and jail these crooks, prosecute them to the fullest extent under RICO and financial fraud, and claw back every single thing. There is no statute of limitations. They can be prosecuted all the way back to 1913, just as the Israeli Likud want to go all the way back and get the Germans from World War II and get the money back from Switzerland banks. We can do the same thing. We can go all the way back to 1913 because anytime there's fraud, there is no statute of limitations. We can take every dime, we can claw back, take all their houses, possessions, cars, everything they have, and then we can force them to make a choice, either disavow one citizenship. If they want to stay Israeli citizen, fine, boot them out, send them back to Israel if they love it so much. If they want to be a citizen here, they can never run for office again. But the bottom line is, time's coming, they got to be routed out and they got to be prosecuted. And those that have committed treason need to be fully prosecuted. And these are capital crimes. They need to be hung by the neck until dead.
And I'm in agreement with you, Doc. And we have Chip Tatum on also. He was going to miss him. Thank God he got back in time. But you're absolutely correct. We do need to get rid of this money. And as Gordon Duff said, go ahead, make our day, pull your terrorist attacks, do a Walmart, do a shopping mall, and guess what we're going to do to you? Well, that's open season, folks. That's when I have my arrest warrants. That's when I go out. I pick up the enemy that have been my enemy, the ones that tried to murder me and other things. I go pick them up. And if they want to come to the new Leavenworth concentration camp where I will deliver them to, that's fine. If they don't, it's called hot lead to the head. And that's it. That day's coming. And by the end of October, I think that this may come to reality. And like Gordon says, we will chase you down. We will get you any place you are in the world because of his resources and who he's connected to, and that will be done. And
I got a question for Gene Tatum. Are you there, Gene?
Hi, Doc. Yeah, I'm here.
Okay. We've had all these Task Force 160 helicopters flying around at night, and you in the past mentioned that it takes an extreme amount of skill to fly these with night vision and stuff. How possible is it that they're going to screw up and cause some major accident in the downtown area doing this hot shotting, flying sideways and going through buildings? How dangerous is it?
Oh, it's extremely dangerous, and even the best pilot in the world, we're human beings. We make errors. Look, we lost a lot of aircraft, Little Birds and Blackhawks, out of Fort Campbell. I think one of our first commanders was relieved of duty simply because we lost so darn many aircraft as we started practicing our night vision stuff. We lost an aircraft doing a simple landing into a compound in Pakistan or somewhere, if I recall correctly. The pilot misjudged. He pulled in a little too much pitch. He went into and they will never say that aircraft settled with power going into the bin Laden compound, but that aircraft settled with power. In other words, the rotor blades no longer provided enough lift to keep the aircraft hovering and flying. So those blades stalled out, and he hit that bounced down onto the ground a little short of his intended landing area. And yes, that can happen. You can get in a unsettled position. You can put the aircraft into a bank where you go into a slip, and you depending on what you slip toward, you may slip toward one of the buildings. There may be lines not seeing. There may be, a lot of these buildings have antennas on top, and the antennas have guy wires. They may not see those guy wires. With night vision goggles, it's very, very difficult to see everything, especially small items like that. Look, someone could stand in an office building and throw a 3-liter glass bottle of Coca-Cola, hit the rotor blades, and cause damage to the rotor blades. I mean, anything can happen.
Well, we've had this going on for at least 10 years that I know of, all these exercises. Do you know anything about what are the policies that have created this situation where it's almost constant training? What are they training for? Are they training for civil war? Are they training for foreign invasion? What is this all about? Because they're spending a lot of money, and I think they're subjecting a lot of these pilots to dangers that are not really necessary.
We hit several cities when I was with 160th. Even Las Vegas, Atlantic City, we practiced going in unfamiliar terrain because that's important. As a pilot, and especially with night vision goggles, being able to adapt quickly to an unfamiliar environment is very important, especially in combat. Look, you're under pressure, you're under stress, so that they're practicing to go into unfamiliar terrain. That was then. Continuing training and continuing going into these areas. There could be more into it now. I'm not going to say that there is. I know these guys. I know a lot of them, and I know a lot of them wouldn't have a lot to do with if Homeland Security ordered them in. I believe a lot of those pilots would say, "Aye, aye, sir. See you later," only because I know a lot of them still. But look, they do have camps. They continue to build these camps. Call them concentration camps, call them stalags, call them whatever you want. You can call them fusion centers. That's the big word they use these days, are fusion centers. And this is where people will be put. This is where they will be tagged, and it will be decided what their level of security would be, and then shipped off to another facility. These fusion centers are being built around the United States. What the pilots and what 160th do, fellas, they're nothing more than fancy taxi drivers. They deliver, and what the others do, they do.
Okay, but my question is that, is this some kind of planned civil war? Are they preparing for ultimate occurrences that are very unlikely to happen, such as foreign invasion? What is this really all about? Do you have any idea?
Doc, I don't know. We train to go into hostile environments, unfamiliar environments, so that we stayed safe and we kept our passengers alive. That's what we train to do. What operations and why operations tasked us with those flights going into those areas, we really didn't get in. We really didn't know, and we really didn't discuss it because, look, we're stationed here in the United States. It's tough to go train offshore somewhere, and it's very expensive, and you have to leave your families and everything else. I believe that they're training for missions. Whether those missions are going to be on terra firma United States of America or terra firma offshore, I don't know, but they are training for missions.
You
And if I were a betting man, I would bet some of those missions would be here. How's that?
Yeah, right. But I think your statement that there are, my experience with some of these pilots that have worked on special ops and special operators is that when they're fighting, in Iran-Contra, they buy the cover story. Communism was a horrible thing, and it was easy to motivate them with that cover story. However, now this terrorism thing is becoming quite thin, and many of them are aware that 911 was an inside job, done by the Israelis and the American Joint Chiefs and all that. They know this. So I think the motivation, I see a real shift in the military to patriotism, and I think at least half of them would outright reject being used as a tool against the American people. Maybe they go and try to abate rioting or something, but I see a very low possibility that they would be deployed in a full-scale war to disarm the American public.
When I was at Special Operations Center here at MacDill not long ago, we talked a little bit about domestic terrorism, and most of the guys there are in agreement, right? Domestic terrorism, sure.
We've got it's 6:48. We've got less than about 7 minutes, and Doc, we're going to have to shift here. Gordon Duff, I think, laid it out. Same thing I've heard, that there's going to be terrorist attacks between now and October. They're going to try to overthrow the government. These are the hardcore, hardliner, George Bush, APEC crowd. Expect shopping malls, expect a football, baseball event, major event, definitely a Walmart. They're expecting it. And this is Daddy Bush, APEC crowd going to do it. So if you see it, you have to shoot it out. The shopping mall folks, blow them away. Get rid of them. Here's the bottom line. Dr. Preston James, we got to give Gene Chip Tatum a quick 5 minutes explanation. What happened the other day, Gene, with your arrest?
Well, I can't talk a lot about it because I'm still going to go to trial, and we are going to trial on this. There's no doubt about that. We went out to see the manatee. It was a Sunday. It was a wonderful, hot, sunny day, and so we went out to Crystal River to watch the manatee. There's a bridge over there we like to go to, and we watched the manatee and stopped on the way home, had a couple drinks, and I drove home. I think we were there. I will say I took 3 Miller Lights. I drank 3 Miller Lights over a 2-hour period, and we started to drive home. I noticed that someone in the bar was watching us, and he wasn't drinking. And when we left the bar, I told her I think someone's following us. I drove around and I made a couple turns, and that car made a couple turns, and then after a little while, driving back through the residential area, making turns, making sure that this person was following us, a second car joined that car. So there were 2 cars behind me. So I decided I'd pull into a residence. I pulled into a residence, acted like we lived there, got out of the car and walked toward the front door. Now this is 10 o'clock at night. Walked toward the front door, and both cars pulled up a little bit. One stopped behind, one stopped in front, and that's when I hopped in my car and I left. And we pulled into McDonald's. I wanted to see if they'd follow us into there. They didn't. When we pulled out of McDonald's, they followed us again, and then I made a right turn. I made a left turn, and a Hernando County sheriff came up behind us and pulled us over. Wanted to know what I was doing in that residential area, and I said someone was following me. He said, "Yeah, sure," and that was that. He asked me if I wanted to take a breathalyzer, and they tried to give Stacy, and she was a passenger in the car. They tried to give her a breathalyzer. Now, they knew nothing about us. However, when they started questioning her, they pulled me out of the car. When they started questioning her, they asked her if she was a journalist, who she was, did she know who I was, did she know what kind of trouble person I can be. So they knew all about me before they even pulled me over. They knew about us. They asked her to take a breathalyzer to make sure she was okay to drive home, and they gave her the handheld breathalyzer, and They tried it once, it didn't work. They tried it twice, it didn't work. They said, "Oh, let's change the batteries." They changed the batteries, it still didn't work. And they gave her a little eye test, and then they came up. Then the head deputy came over and said, "Will you take a breathalyzer?" I looked at him and I said, "Oh, hell no." And I said, "But I will take a blood test." So they took me back to the sheriff's office, processed me through, and he said, "If you don't take this breathalyzer, it's against Florida state law." I said, "Look, you tried the breathalyzer twice out there. I'm not going to take a breathalyzer. I will take a blood test." He said, "Well, a blood test is your own. You have to pay for yourself." I said, "Okay." And they never did it. And they arraigned me the following morning on suspected DUI.
Okay, now, Gene, you were going to come out with the former governor, criminal Jeb Bush, was running around raising money, Republican events, private, about 2 weeks ago. And you made an announcement about a week ago that you were going to come out with the Pegasus Files, which Pegasus Files are going into a lot of details about a lot of stuff involving Jeb Bush.
And his wife.
And suddenly the Colombian, or the Mexican, that's all connected.
Colombia, who's from Mexico, yes.
Right, all tied up in the crime syndicate. Now, you were going to come out with this, you still are. This is basically, you've been targeted because you made that statement, because you worked for Jeb Bush, George Herbert Walker Bush, Ollie North, all of them. You have so much on these people. You were charged with treason and sedition because you wouldn't assassinate, neutralize presidential candidate Ross Perot. You took a hike at that point. You've done a lot of things in behalf of your government, and you took them at the orders of the president and then Vice President George Herbert Walker Bush. And this is his friggin' son.
And Ollie North.
And Ollie North. And this
and
is
his
friggin' son, Jeb Bush, that wants to be the next president of the United States to keep the crime syndicate in check. And we're at the end of this show. Now, you have a fundraiser, ChipTatum.com. Folks, we need to raise money for Gene Chip Tatum and his defense. You're about $4,500 shy, aren't you, Gene?
We sure are. And that's the minimum. He said it's going to cost about $8,000 altogether. I had my own. I had a few thousand of my own, but I still need to raise. I had to raise $5,000 more for the attorney.
We're at the end of the show. I want to thank you, Gene Chip Tatum, Dr. Preston James. Thank you, sir.